Hey everybody, my name is Brandon Fleming. I'm on the debate faculty at Harvard University. I'm the founder of the Harvard Diversity Project. Amid this global pandemic and these unprecedented times, there's absolutely nothing that I would rather do than to engage and share with fellow educators from all around the world. These are critical times for creativity and innovation, and there's nobody who's more used to that than educators. You are absolutely superheroes, and the world is looking to us right now to be able to come up with innovative ways to continue to shape the minds and the lives of these young people. But now we have to pivot. We have to pivot from doing that physically in the classroom to a virtual classroom. And so I want to talk to you very quickly about tips and techniques to remain efficient in the virtual classroom. Before I do that, I want to tell you just a little bit about myself. I'm on the Harvard debate faculty where I actually train minority students in high school and prepare and equip them to be able to matriculate to Harvard University for a summer residential program. I have experience working with at-risk and gifted students, mostly because at two different points of my life, I've actually been both. I was the student who was struggling all throughout grade school, all throughout secondary school, and matriculated to college, and I was highly illiterate, and I had to go through a process of reinventing myself into a scholar. And the benefit of that time for me is that I was able to ask myself, when I was that student in the classroom who was disengaged, who was intolerant and unenthused, what would have worked for me? And I've been able to take that answer and craft a curriculum and a pedagogy in order to engage the minds of young people at all levels. And so now I'm fortunate to be able to do that for Harvard University. I want to talk to you very quickly about tips and techniques for virtual training. The way we're going to do this is in three different ways, how we're going to forensically examine this. One, we're going to talk about desired outcomes. What are we really trying to do here? What is it that we hope to accomplish? Two, we're going to talk about foreseeable challenges. What circumstances might stand in the way of us being able to achieve those outcomes? And lastly, and most importantly, we're going to talk about practical solutions. What is it that we can do to embrace those challenges in order to achieve the outcomes that we desire? And I like to start with just kind of like a general philosophy of education, because while there are some things that are different about the physical and the virtual classroom, there are also some things that are the same. And that is the philosophy of education in which we choose to engage young people. And one of the things that I share with the educators all around the world is this is what we have to understand about education. Education is not transactional. It is experiential. I'm gonna say that one more time because it's very important. Education is not transactional. Education is experiential. What's the difference? When education is transactional, that means it's about information. It's about simply providing information to a young person. But Carter G. Woodson said something so powerful. He said, the mere imparting of information is not education. The effort must result in one's ability to think and to do for himself. And so education goes beyond just information. Education is experiential. That means you not only focus on the information that you give, but you focus on the vibe of the classroom. You focus on the connection that is made from teacher to student and from peer to peer. That is what makes learning an experience. And that is ultimately what makes information resonate. And that's why that's incredibly important. Maya Angelou once said something so powerful. She said, you may not remember what people say, but you will always remember the way they make you feel. And so when your student walks out of your classroom, whether physical or whether virtual, you want to ask yourself, how did my students walk into this classroom feeling? And how do they feel when they exit? So let's talk about that. I want to give you one example in this very quick preview of how we will discuss a myriad of different solutions and challenges that you can expect to encounter in the virtual classroom. One is kind of what I just mentioned, engagement. We need engagement because that is ultimately how we transfer and impart knowledge from the teacher, from our mind, to the student, and that is how they perform. But in order to perform, we have to engage them first. So what's the challenge when it comes to virtual engagement? The challenge is we're communicating through a screen. How impersonal is that? Yeah, it's very difficult. It's hard for you to connect with me through a screen. And so now we have to come up with innovative ways to create an experience for a student in the classroom through a phone, through a computer, or whatever piece of technology they choose to use. And so what are some ways we can do that? I'm gonna give you one. One of the ways we can do that is by breaking up the monotony. We don't want that in the physical classroom, so we certainly don't want that in the virtual classroom. We do that by changing the pace. We do that by changing the tone. We do that by changing the tempo. We do that essentially with change, changing the stimulus to where the students will always be engaged. There's one way in particular that you can do that, and that is through creative conversations. Unfortunately, we don't have in a virtual classroom all the resources that we might have in the physical, and that creates a challenge. But the one thing we do have is our ability to connect with each other through dialogue. And so in this session, not only will I unpack for you how to have creative conversations, but I will also provide you with other tools that you can use to engage students in a myriad of different ways.